Hey, it's Francis. This week we're reliving the past with an episode from last year about the best pizza in North Philly, and we're taking your calls with our friend Lisa Donovan. Have a listen. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table from APM. Sometimes food means more than just the food. In North Philadelphia, there's a pizzeria that is maybe the most innovative and, I might say, the most important pizza shop I've ever come across. It's called Down North Pizza, and its founder, Muhammad Abdul-Hadi, says the point of the place is to sling pies and save lives. He means it literally. In his community, 2/3 of people who come home from prison end up back in prison, largely because they come home to situations with no money, no resources, and no jobs. He started the restaurant specifically to hire only formerly incarcerated people. He's the author of a new cookbook, too, because the pies are really just that good. It's called We the Pizza, and we'll catch up with him later on in the show. But first, we're going to talk with my good friend Lisa Donovan. Lisa is a terrific pastry chef who's worked in some of the most respected restaurants in the South. After decades doing that, she's turned to writing and leading cooking classes abroad. And we have her here today to take on some of your cooking questions with me. So hey Lisa, it's great to see you.
Hey Francis, I'm glad to be here.
Oh, one of my favorite people. You know, it's been a little while since we've gotten to have you on the show. You've been busy. What have you been doing? You've been leading cooking adventures in France, going back and forth from there to home in Nashville. You're actually currently in New Orleans, and you've been writing a monthly cooking column for the New York Times Magazine. And okay, so you've always had a thing for New Orleans. I know that about you. I remember reading that in the book as well. And I want to ask you about one of your recent columns. It's about a cake you actually had in New Orleans called Gâteau Nana.
Yeah, and technically I didn't have it in, depends on who you ask. Some people say Gâteau Nana, some people say Gâteau Nana. And it actually didn't have it in New Orleans. I have had versions of it all, in France. They have Gâteau Breton. They have different types of things that are very similar to this in France. And this comes from Melissa Martin's book, her new book, Bayou, and it's a recipe from a bakery not far from where she's from. And I might have to I feel terrible because I've been in such a flurry that I can't recall the name of the town. And it's a beautiful version of a very traditional French gâteau called Gâteau Breton, and this is got pecans in it instead of using almonds, which is sort of the thing that I love the most about discovering is whenever you can find things that sort of are very cross-cultural, but the same idea, just with different ingredients based on where you're from, what your locality is. Right. So I love it because it's made with pecans, and as a Southerner, pecan is sort of one of my top nuts. So I really love that recipe quite a bit. And
describe it for us. Describe this cake for us.
So you're basically making like a really beautiful short crust that's, you can do this with like a quick puff, but this particular dough is made more of like a short crust, and you make it almost like a galette de roi, where you've got a bottom crust and a top crust, and then you've got like a frangipane in the center. But instead of a frangipane made with almonds, you're basically making it with toasted pecans, which is so much a nuttier and warmer flavor. And especially if you're from a region that is prolific in pecans, it's like a very homey taste, I think, to a lot of us. I know, like when I was growing up, my grandparents lived in Live Oak, Florida, and they had pecan trees everywhere. And one of our things to do was to sit around watching Mandrell sisters picking pecans from the yard. And so for me, like, pecans is such a Southern childhood memory. And this is such a beautiful recipe that really elevates it into this very classic, very French-inspired cake, which full of vanilla, full of, beautiful flavors that are just very simple and warm. And it's a really great holiday cake. I love it so much.
Oh, cool. So I love frangipane, like those like almond paste
me
filled
too.
things. Like I love it. At some point I realized I changed from like a chocolate croissant person to an almond croissant person just because I
Yeah,
love that almond paste, that frangipane.
so
When you
good.
make that, and usually like, people just buy it, right? You can just buy the frangipane, but often I find it's like very
Yeah,
sweet and almost like plasticky. It's not so
yeah,
super delicious. When you make it
yeah.
fresh and you make it with pecans, say, is it just like
Hmm.
blending the nuts and sugar? Like,
Yeah,
what's just
and
quickly, what's the
butter.
process for
And
making that?
so
Yeah.
so I admittedly, like, there are beautiful frangipane recipes that you can follow. I always just sort of throw mine together with soft butter and nuts and sugar, and then maybe just like get one little egg in there just so it's nice and spreadable, and then it kind
Mm,
of bakes up a little bit more. It kind of brings everything together a little bit. And the great thing about, yeah, I put it in a, who's a what's it, a little Cuisinart, a little blender, and just get it nice and, like, pasty. And basically, you're looking for a texture that is akin to like a peanut butter, like a chunky
mm,
peanut butter, like a natural kind of peanut butter, maybe just a little thicker. And the
yeah.
great thing about making your own, it's so simple. You get your almond paste, or you make your own almond paste. You can just use nuts and toast. You should always toast your nuts pretty much in any application, just to sort of bring out some of the flavor, and to really kind of help them. You don't want to blend them warm, though, I will say, because
Okay.
then
Oh,
you're
did they start to like melt, kind of like did they
yeah, I
puree
mean,
if
yeah.
if you
and,
blend
and
them
if
warm?
and if you do want like a really smooth, I kind of like mine a little bit to have a little bit of the nut texture to it.
Hmm.
You can also buy like what's it called? You can also buy just almond paste and use that, or
Sure.
some kind of nut paste and use that. But the great thing about making it, you know, on your own is, it's so simple, and secondly, you can always like up the salt a little bit, take down the sugar a little bit. I love putting warmer notes in mine with vanilla, and I'll hit it with a little
Mm.
brandy or rum.
Oh, cool.
Just something to sort of like round it out and sort of, I hate the word elevate, but like bring it
Yeah,
out a
just kind of
little
make it a
bit.
little more
Bring it,
complex. Yeah.
yeah, like have a little bit more of a conversation with it, instead of it just being a sweet nut.
I love that. A conversation with nuts. It feels like modern life, actually.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
speaking of which, although I am not saying anything about our callers, they are probably really lovely people. Um, you want to take some callers with us?
I would love that. It would be so fun.
Okay, so let's bring on Angela.
Hello.
Hi, Angela.
Hey,
So nice to
Angela.
meet you.
Hi, Seth. How are you?
Great. So, where are you calling from?
I'm in northern Michigan. I'm in Sheboygan, it's right below the Mackinac Bridge.
Oh, beautiful. I love Northern.
Wow.
I am an honorary Michigander at heart, so I love
Oh,
Michigan
really? I
and
didn't know
Melbourne,
that.
Michigan. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know. I
Well, I
love
went
it.
to college there.
Yes, I have, my oldest is in Ann Arbor now, so I love it when I hear you refer to it on your show.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, great. And Sheboygan is gorgeous.
It
So
really
super
is.
green. Anyway, we don't even have to talk about geography. What do you have in mind? What can we talk about?
Well, I don't have access to fresh produce very long. It's about 4 weeks of a harvest season, if we're lucky.
Hmm.
And I've been buying celebrity cookbooks for years, and I finally was able to go to one of my cookbook authors' actual restaurant. And one of the things I
Oh,
ordered
cool.
was a marinara sauce. And
Hmm.
I thought I'd been recreating it with his cookbook, but I obviously wasn't, because his was so much better. And this is my thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, but marinara sauce doesn't take a lot of like technical skill. So I thought it has to be the ingredient. And in the recipe, it said
Mm,
2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And I would just buy the little like 3-inch can from the grocery store.
sure,
And then I heard
sure,
your
sure.
episode on tomato paste, and I thought, I wonder if maybe I'm just not using the right ingredients. And if so, like, how can I make the tomato paste that could be a staple in so many things and make them better?
Mm. First of all, I want to say thank you for being a listener. Second of all, I want to say I love us. Like, I love that you're like, I listened to your episode about tomato paste. I'm like, I make a show where we talk about like an episode of tomato paste. Like, like in any
Yeah.
other part of the world, they'd be like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would
Yeah.
you bother talking about this? But
Oh,
no,
it's
I love tomato
amazing.
paste.
No, the specifics are so helpful because they're the foundation, so it's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lisa, I have spent so many hours making tomato paste. I used to think it was something, I used to think I was doing something else. Like I was like
Uh-huh.
making tomato concentrate, or I was
Right.
making like tomato jam,
It's
or I
just
was
good old
making
fashioned tomato paste.
strato. And then one time, the woman who would become my wife came into the kitchen as I was on like hour 3 of stirring, and I was like, "Babe, look what I'm doing. It's gonna be amazing." And she's like, "You made tomato paste."
Yeah, that's why
Yeah,
she's your wife. And that's why you're smart for making her your wife.
yeah, totally,
No nonsense, that one.
totally. Literally, she said, "You made tomato paste. It's cheap and comes in cans." Yeah.
But it is good. I don't, there are things that I find are better to just buy. Like I've tried making like pumpkin puree before, but just buy the
Mhm,
Libby. The Libby's just, like it's just made so perfectly. But in this case, I think we're dealing with something that actually is so special to make and
mhm.
so easy to make. And so it's just a little bit of your time,
Right.
but like if you can get your hands on some really good tomatoes, why not? Like, how do you do you guys do your in the oven or stovetop or a combo of both? How do you guys do it?
Wait, Angela, so you have not made the tomato paste yet, right? Your question is like,
Yeah.
what's the secret to making tomato paste?
What's the secret? And also, just do you have some good ideas? So I know buy local and everything, but if I did have to order frozen or freeze them, or
Mm.
just recommendations on types of tomatoes and different
Mhm.
varieties and whatever you feel like talking about. I would like to hear anything about it.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Suddenly we're on hour 3 of tomato paste conversation. Lisa Donovan is the author of the memoir, Our Lady of Perpetual Hunger. She's a cooking columnist for the New York Times Magazine, and we'll be back in a minute with more of our passionate conversation about tomato paste, and we'll take more of your calls. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the Splendid Table from APM. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the show for curious cooks and eaters. Before the break, we were talking with Lisa Donovan, taking your cooking questions and getting into all the finer points of making tomato paste. Let's get back to it. For me, anyway, I do make it, but I only make it truly like in summer when like your friend
Mm,
has a tomato plant and they're just like trying
yeah.
to give them away, or they're not expensive at the market. Because I would say like this kind of goes against every like local seasonal bone in my body, but I have been amazed lately at like a few brands of off-season tomatoes. Like I'm like, holy cow, those taste really good, to the point where like I feel kind of
Mm,
wrong eating them. But like
yeah.
I have found like different brands of like grocery store February tomatoes that taste really, really good. There's these ones called like
Mm,
honey bombs that are like incredible. Um, and they also do they have a few like lines of them. There's a honey bomb, there's a sugar bomb. They're all
mm,
called something bomb, and they're like I'm kind of blown away by how tasty they are. But they're expensive, and I wouldn't spend the money to buy them to like cook them for 3 hours and concentrate them. You know what I mean? I would when like, oh, the tomatoes are like $1 a pound, or like
mhm,
someone like, just hands you a whole basket of them. So I would say that. However, if you're like in the off season and you really want like a very and maybe we should talk a little bit about the pleasures of making tomato paste, aside from like, boy, you really want to stand there and stir for a long time. There really is something magical. It's not just, I think, the concentration where you're cooking off all the water of the tomatoes until they
mhm,
become a paste. There's something about like a very sort of light caramelization, and I don't know. I think there's something about the cooking. It's not just the
mhm,
evaporation that makes them so not just sweet and deep, but like super umami.
mhm.
And that's why I enjoy making it. And then I won't even can it. I'll just like freeze them, like put them in ice
Yeah.
cube trays and
I
freeze
feel
them.
like freezing is the best way to go with that too. I prefer to just do them in a little like 1 or 2 ounce scoop on a
Hmm.
sheet tray, freeze them, and then pop them in a bag, and then you can just grab, a pre-portioned out amount, however,
Yeah.
whatever you need for your recipe. It's just easier that way. When you go to all the trouble of canning, which I love the process of canning, but and you can't really can less than what are those little baby jars like. I think they're 4 ounces,
Right.
are the smallest cans you can get. So you kind of have to then think about working through if you don't need all of that, if you just need a teaspoon or something, working through, a can of or a jar of tomato paste versus just being able to pop out, a little bit from the freezer, is better. I think freezing is my favorite way to go. But I don't even mind, you were talking about it being a bit laborious to stand over and that sort of being one of the drawbacks potentially for someone. But I think that's actually the beauty of making something like tomato paste is you're kind of tethered to a bit of a day where you can walk away, but you can set these like 30-minute timers. And I like to do mine in the oven because
Cool.
I feel like that for me, in a nice, semi-shallow baking dish, and keep stirring, because what you can get in the oven are these really beautiful caramelized edges of that pan that you can then reincorporate. And I think you can kind of get that on a stovetop, but something gets lost. I think when you don't do it in an oven, that richness, that depth, I think that you're looking for, I think happens a little more readily in the oven for my experiences than over a
I
stovetop.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So basically, you just take the fresh tomatoes, throw them. I don't even peel them. I just throw them in a blender and then just chuck
I
them
do
in.
seed them though. I do like to sort of like, cut a little hole in the butt. And I typically use plum tomatoes, and I'll use in the South, I'm from the South. So when we get good tomatoes, we're going to be hard pressed to do much with them, but just eat them, or make or jar, or, put them in a jar whole or stewed just a little bit. I actually, admittedly, I'm going to get arrested by the culinary police, but like I actually find that the only time I buy grocery store tomatoes, being from the South and all, I really have a hard time buying any grocery store tomatoes. I haven't found one that I love yet. But if I find myself with a bevy of like tomatoes that I don't actually care about, that might not be like the most flavorful. Actually, I think those for me are the best ones to make into a paste, because really then you get to work with pulling out the flavor. And, of course, like the better the tomato, the better the paste, but it's actually a really good recipe to use up some, grocery store tomatoes that might not be the best for a tomato sandwich or to, make a whole sauce out of, because then what you really get to do is pull the flavor out of whatever is in there of these like picked too soon tomatoes or, things
Just like
in the groceries.
They weren't God's children.
Exactly. They were not the chosen ones. But I'll just get the seeds out. But I'm with you, man. I just like leave the skin on and get them all processed up.
Yeah. Well, I hope that helps, Angela. And I would say one more thing. If obviously now, we're talking about you live in Michigan, that probably won't be till like August for you, or even like September before you can get your hands on the really good tomatoes. For now, I would say I would look at like Italian brands of tomato paste, and if they're called like, I forget, is it strato, tomato strato, which basically means like extract or some of those are really incredibly delicious, and they could be a little bit pricey, but like if you're using a teaspoon at a time just to give some real oomph to your sauce, it's really really lovely. Or if you don't have to run like a little splash of soy sauce in a tomato sauce and a marinara sauce, or it gives you a lot of that umami that you might be looking for. So that could be a little cheat for you too.
And I'll throw in a little bit of the oil from the anchovy jar if you guys want to.
Yeah.
A little. That's always nice to just, if you don't want to fully commit to like the anchovy flavor, just a little hit of that umami oil, or the anchovy oil from the jar. If you get that upright jar of anchovies, that's always a nice hit as well. Just nice salinated little kick there if you want to just round out your flavors.
Yum.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And if I did go to a specialty store and found the paste, I like your idea of putting scoops and freezing little portions, even if it's store bought, because it's always so sad to watch that leftover half of a can of tomato paste dry out in the fridge.
Yeah,
totally. Be a lot nicer.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. Well, have fun, and thanks for the call.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for calling. All right, let's go to our next caller, Lisa. This is Jessamine.
Hi, this is Jessamine. I'm delighted to talk to both of you.
Hey,
Hi.
Jessamine. Nice to hear from you.
Thanks so much for calling. Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm calling from Santee, South Carolina.
All right. Well, thank you. And what's your question?
My question is about how to incorporate bitter flavors into different types of cuisines to add some depth and complexity. I'd really like to explore how I might be able to use unsweetened chocolate to add a bitter note, but I could use some guidance because the only recipes I'm finding are for sweet baked things. And also, the other part of that question is it all right for that purpose to use the unsweetened baker's chocolate or cocoa powder that I might find in the baking aisle, or do I need to be on the lookout for a different type of product?
Oh,
I
I have so many thoughts about this.
I
This is
I
a great
love this question, and
question. I do
I
too.
think I've never been asked this before in my entire life. Like, I've never heard someone say, "I want to experiment with adding bitterness," because I think people
Yeah.
think of bitterness as being something only to be avoided. Um, but yeah, Lisa, go for this. I
Yeah,
want to hear
well,
what
I
you
mean,
have
a
to say.
couple of like the obvious thing that comes to mind is like a Mexican mole really uses it to sort of create that sense of depth. And
Mm,
I understand, bitterness. Kind of going to your point is it can have in professional kitchens at least kind of a negative connotation. And I think what we would call that is just sort of a richness. I think you're trying to
mm,
sort of find like an extra avenue in which to sort of round out some flavors. And the I feel like when you're talking about using like an unsweetened chocolate or a cocoa powder, what it brings to my mind is more of sort of an under flavor, if that makes any
mm-hmm.
sense, right? Like you're trying to sort of hit like a different round instead of salty or vinegar or anything like that. You're really trying to bring something down to the belly of its own flavor, right? So when
Mm,
I think of mole, I think it's like, this richness. Francis and I just had, this beautiful duck mole a few months ago in
yeah,
Nashville
yeah.
at this place called Mais de la Vida. And to me, there is that sort of suggestion of that bittersweet chocolate that he's using in there. But really what it's doing is it's taking all of the other spices and all of the other flavors that he puts into that mole and just grounds it, like immediately grounds it into the dish. And it's so beautiful. And I think, that's sort of the obvious one is talking about when you're talking about unsweetened chocolate is a mole. But I could see so many other places in which you could put that. A lot of these kind of gamier meats to me kind of maybe call for that, maybe
Mm-hmm.
have this sort of space to sort of create maybe like a rich broth. And the way that I'm thinking about this is sort of almost like when you're braising something in a red wine, maybe that might be a fun place to sort of play around with like a real depth. If you're finding yourself with like, I don't know, a venison or something like that, maybe, or even a duck. I think duck and these sort of richer meats maybe are
Mm-hmm.
calling to sort of be grounded a little bit because those flavors can get hit the wrong way, right? But if you give it something that's a little bit more grounded, it might be nice. And just to sort of answer your question about the quality of chocolate, I'm a huge fan and advocate for use what you can find, right? Like that's I think for me like the beauty of cooking, like use what you can find with the understanding that of course if you're standing there and you have the option to get a nicer chocolate, that's going to be a different experience, not maybe marginally, but if you're really trying to sort of play around with figuring out what to do with this, I would just start with I think that baker's chocolate is just fine. It
Mm-hmm.
um, doesn't quite have the notes, if you will. Like I don't really love to talk about food like wine necessarily because it starts to feel a bit, elitist. But if
Yeah.
the nicer the chocolate or the more considered the chocolate is made, the richer the flavor will be. So just keep that in mind. But I'm a big advocate for using what you can find, and cocoa powder is a really good option as well because that tends to sort of be a little less processed than the bar might be.
Yeah. I would also say too, I love what you have to say about Lisa. It's like the bitterness, particularly if you're using a dark chocolate, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like grounds the flavor
Mm-hmm.
more than anything else. I would say the same thing about the chocolate, and I'm a huge fan of like lots of like there are all these new like very small batched bean to bar chocolate
Mm-hmm.
makers, particularly in the U.S. Like the makers are here. The cacao, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
come from is never local. You can't grow cacao in most parts of the United States, but their whole thing is like they really want to feature the natural flavor of the cocoa beans and all that. Um, but I do think a lot of those really amazing chocolates are, I mean, if you have like unlimited resources for your recipe, like sure, go for it. But if you're going to be doing it with like spices or red wine or a braise or a meat, some of those nuances probably are lost. And so, like Lisa said, like using whatever's on hand, like a very bitter chocolate or a baker's chocolate, kind of gets you that oomph, especially if you're using that, but you don't necessarily need the sugar. You can add the sugar. You can control the sugar yourself. So if you're adding like a 70% dark chocolate, you're also adding sugar to your recipe, and maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you just want the dark chocolate flavor. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I have a quick question, if we have a second for you, Jessamine, is how have you used it so far? Have you tried using it in different applications yet?
I have not. I thought I would ask for guidance before I perform too many experiments in my kitchen. So, because
do you have any daydreams right now? Are you imagining anything right now with it?
Well, I like the idea of the mole because we do really like Hispanic food. And so I think that would suit really well. If I can find a couple good recipes for that, I think I'll try that avenue first and see where I get.
A great place to start is Patty Yinich is an amazing Mexican-American chef, and she has some really beautiful recipes. If you want to look her up, it's Patijinich, Patty Yinich, and she's got some beautiful recipes. And I know she's got a couple of different mole recipes if you want to check them out.
Good. I think that's amazing. A good place for me to start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. I really appreciate the guidance.
Thank you for the great question. That was a fun one to think about.
That. Yeah, have fun.
Okay. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, I think we have a couple minutes left. You want to try? We actually have a voicemail.
Yeah, great.
And from Rick. Let's try this one.
This is Rick Malone. And I do have a question, and that's about garlic. When a recipe calls for X number of cloves of garlic, does it matter how large the cloves are? Do 2 tiny cloves equal 1 medium-sized clove? Or how do you know? Or does it just matter on how much you love garlic?
I gotta say,
this is like the third rail question for recipe writers.
It's a hard. We're laughing because this is like literally the question of the day every day whenever you write recipes. Yeah. It's so funny, and the same goes for vanilla. So me and Erin Jean McDowell, we got to cook last year in France, and we were talking about vanilla. And she has this turn of phrase that's basically you measure with your heart. Yeah. And I feel the same way about garlic. I don't know if you do, but, I just always basically, try to find the biggest, heartiest, most beautiful clove. And that to me is a clove. And if it's a smaller one, well, then I use 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, Rick even says it is just like how much you like garlic. I think, for the most part. I mean, there are some people who are like super sensitive to the flavor of garlic. And I think that changes too. Like raw garlic is a very different beast than cooked garlic.
Agree. Yeah.
So if the recipe is for a raw garlic, I would maybe try to err on the side of caution maybe, and then add more later, because you can always have more. You can't take it out. So if it's like 1 clove and you have like a teeny clove and you have like a massive clove, maybe start with the teeny one and then see how much you like it.
That's right.
And the thing with garlic, and in particular raw garlic, the flavor does tend to bloom, meaning once you've like minced it up or grated it or whatever, the flavor actually increases over time, and it will actually increase in the recipe over time. So like
that's right.
Mix it in, give it a moment, maybe even, a few moments, like not like 2 minutes later, but like after a while, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, see how that flavor is. And if that flavor is like where you want it, then great. Otherwise, you can add a little more. But if it's a cooked garlic, I'm like, sure, whatever, dude. Like,
that's right.
A fistful, 2 tablespoons.
Yeah.
Just do whatever you want.
Exactly. Like, and if you've got really beautiful, super fresh garlic, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like garlic is garlic. But if you go to a farmer's market and find some like really beautifully fresh grown garlic, it's actually a little bit more vegetal than like the garlic
and more
that you
mild.
can find.
It's
way
spicy.
more mild. That's right. Like it feels very fresh in a way that store-bought garlic that's a bit aged, we'll call it. It doesn't quite feel, but yeah, it feels fresher and it's a little less spicy and it's a little less, on the tip of your tongue and it's instead in sort of the round of your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, yeah. And I guess it just depends on like your application, like you're saying, like for fresh, I probably would go pretty light, but I love cooked garlic. I mean,
Yeah.
and if it's hot roasted and smeared on something, even better.
Right on. Well, Lisa, it has been so fun to talk with you.
Well, it's always nice to talk with you. I love hanging out with you, Francis, either over mole or over
Or
questions
over
in the kitchen.
over listener calls. Yeah. Well, thanks for dropping by. I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, man. Bye.
Lisa Donovan is the author of the memoir Our Lady of Perpetual Hunger and is a cooking columnist for the New York Times Magazine. She left us with her recipe for Tarte Tatin. Told you, she's been perfecting it in France. Find it at splendidtable.org. Coming up, maybe the most innovative pizza shop ever is Muhammad Abdul-Hadi of Philadelphia's Down North Pizza. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is The Splendid Table from APM. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is the show for curious cooks and eaters. Muhammad Abdul-Hadi studied criminal justice policy in college, founded and ran multiple companies in different industries, is a James Beard Award winner, wrote a cookbook called We the Pizza, and is the owner of Down North Pizza in Philadelphia. He also worked his first shift in the restaurant, wearing an ankle monitor. And Down North's whole purpose is to employ formerly incarcerated people, giving them stability and a chance to rebuild their lives after prison, all while making some of the most inventive, delicious pizza you can imagine. So hey, Muhammad, it's so great to see you.
It's a pleasure to be seen. How's it going, Francis?
I'm okay, thank you. So Down North Pizza is an award-winning restaurant. It kind of invented its own style of pizza. It has some of the most creative sauces and toppings I've ever seen. But none of that, I don't think, is the most important part of Down North Pizza to you. Tell us how you came to open this restaurant and why it matters.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I'm gonna dive right in. So no, of course we have some great flavor profiles. We have some great recipes. That's by far it comes secondary to the mission and what we stand for here at Down North Pizza, where we focus on a specific group of individuals, and these individuals have been impacted by the carceral system, formerly incarcerated, to be specific, and we exclusively hire those individuals. We focus on improving their lifestyle and providing them with various different resources to navigate life post-incarceration. As we know, their life has changed drastically going through the system. And we understand the different nuances that goes into trying to stay out of prison. So because we all have been impacted by the carceral system, formerly incarcerated, we understand that, community is very important. Being around individuals who can relate to the struggles and the different things that you have to endure coming out of the system. So I was more so focused on creating that environment that was conducive to growth to help these individuals navigate that. And pizza was just the vehicle to carry the message and to get these conversations started about the overarching problem that plagues America as a whole.
Yeah. So, this is probably the first cookbook I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of cookbooks. This is probably the first cookbook I've ever seen that A, includes the word recidivism, and B, defines it for people. So this is not a word that necessarily everyone knows, right? But it refers to how people who come out of prison often end up back in prison. I believe the statistic is that 40% of all prisoners come out of prison and go back in within a year. And in North Philly, in your neighborhood, it's almost 66%. It's almost 2/3 of everyone who comes out goes back in. What are some of the causes? What are some of the stories that you've seen that influence that figure? That sort of like kind of makes that kind of like makes it inevitable.
I could start with something as simple as resources, right?
Yeah.
Resources readily available to individuals, like employment, like housing, right? Which are the two biggest drivers to recidivism: lack of employment and lack of stable housing, right? So sometimes what I've seen, had experience with, is individuals are forced to go back to the same toxic environments that they lived in before, that got them in some of the situations. They have to go back to those places, go back to those particular neighborhoods and environments that have caused them to, be a part of that statistic.
Right.
So you have to have resources readily available.
Right.
And because we are in the neighborhood, which is very important, because to your point, 66% of it happens here in Strawberry Mansion. We need to be close to the problem, right? So we need to be in these neighborhoods that have high recidivism rates, so that we can be visible and let them know that there is hope, right? But we also need to show them there's hope. And I want to just touch on something about recidivism that people may not know as well. They assume, right, that these individuals are recommitting or committing additional crimes to get back into prison. But that's not the case. A lot of the times it's just things they call DVs, and they're direct violations of stipulations that have been put in place for individuals who have been paroled or on probation from incarceration. So we look at simple things as driving in a car with somebody who doesn't have a license, right? Or being around another individual who was on parole, or, simple everyday things that people unconsciously just do that can potentially land these individuals back in prison. So it's a lot of direct violations that are happening, minor things, that these individuals can go back to prison for a minimum of 6 months. So it's not necessarily individuals are going out and committing additional crimes. It's this direct violations.
Right. And they could be so minor, right? I think there's an example in the book, and I apologize because I forget exactly which, member of your team had a situation where he had to move. I think he was living with his grandmother. Grandmother lost her house, and then he didn't refile his new address, and that became a reason to go back into the system.
Yeah, you talking about Chef Mike.
Okay, yeah.
I know an unfortunate event happened. The actual house we're talking about burnt down. And because he didn't report that right away, it was a direct violation, because you can't change where your address is, where they have you paroled to, without informing them. So that was a direct violation, and that caused him to have to go back into the system, right? And back inside. And we talk about things that, say, if you get fired from your job, like today, and you start another job Monday, and you may have forgot, like, oh, let me call my PO, parole officer, to be clear, and tell him what happened. You may have forgotten, and slipped your mind. That's a direct violation. You're switching employments without notifying this parole officer. So that, in turn, can land you in jail. Mind you, it was hard enough to get a job in the first place, so you got an additional one. And now you're back inside, going to lose that job. And when you get released, if you get released, you're starting back from square one. So every time they go back in, it's like, think about every 6 months or every year, you have to press a reset button on your life and everything that you've accomplished within the previous year.
Right. And since you're mentioning jobs and employment, obviously, that's one of the hugest contributors to recidivism, right? You come out of prison, it may have been, 2 years, it may have been decades, but you come back out and you don't necessarily have, right, a network to help you, keep you supported. Very hard to get employment. Obviously, a lot of employers will discriminate against people who have come out of the system. Many states, try to combat that by saying you're not allowed to ask, but people try to find out anyway, things like that. So that went into your decision to open the restaurant in the first place, like literally to open a business, to hire people, to give them jobs and fair wages and so on and so forth. Tell us about that story. Tell us about like the evolution of that idea, how that idea came to you, and then tell us about how it actually went down when you opened, because you have such a dramatic opening day story.
So yes, I come from a background. I've opened various different businesses, and I've always seen the benefit of hiring individuals who have been impacted by the carceral system. So I come from a healthcare background, and I, own some treatment centers and drug and alcohol, to be specific. And what I saw through that process is that the focus is on surrounding individuals who have been impacted by addiction with other individuals who've been impacted by addiction, because of relatability. These individuals understand where they've been and understand some of the things that the individual who's recovering is going through. And not only to put the individuals recovering around each other, but also to hire individuals who have experience with recovery on a personal level. Right. And the statistics shows that stuff works, right? So my thing is, we need to look at that from the formerly incarcerated perspective as well, because these people can relate to each other on different levels, right? So even, when I was actually building Down North Pizza, right, and I had a construction team that was putting this building together, those were all individuals who were formerly incarcerated, right? So when we talk about Down North business, the actual fabric and bones of this building were built by individuals who've been formerly incarcerated. So this full circle moment of this actual physical space that we're residing in, it bleeds the mission in every aspect. So what we're doing is very, very important for the neighborhood, because, Philadelphia is very territorial. I'm from West Philly. This is North Philly. I couldn't just come into the neighborhood and put this business here that did not benefit the neighborhood as a whole.
Yeah. And as the word got out about that, obviously you were trying to hire, you were sort of putting the word out. You write in the book, the opening of the book talks about the opening of the restaurant. And, on day one, you had a line at the door. Was it folks in the neighborhood being like, hey, we know this thing has been happening here. We want to come check this out, or what was it?
Yeah. Honestly, when I first thought of the concept, people thought I was out of my mind because, the Strawberry Mansion neighborhood, pizza, I don't have any background in the culinary space. So it was like so many strikes against this business is not succeeding in people's eyes. But I didn't let that deter me because, for one, I know it needed to happen. And I was very confident that we can make it happen. Even, being a Black person in the pizza space was something that, was foreign to a lot of people, because traditionally that's not the case. Sure. So it was a lot of things that, people would look at as negative strikes against us trying to develop and bring this concept. So I didn't know what to expect, honestly. I just knew I was confident that we would have some success. So when grand opening and we had the line down the block, I remember peeking my head out the door and looking down the street and like, okay, this is happening. Like, it's kind of a surreal feeling, because it's like, you think about these days, you remember the mishaps, you remember the construction delays, you remember everything. And sometimes in your head, you don't never see a finish line because you just constantly have to keep on working through whatever problem occurs, right? Right. So to see people lined up, and people from the neighborhood, media, people from outside of the neighborhood, people from outside of the state of Pennsylvania, right? We're so excited about this actually opening up. It just gave me a breath of like fresh air and relief, like that we're on to something good.
But meanwhile, there were three of you in the kitchen. And
yeah, it was three of us. So for a split moment, we forgot about some of the staffing issues that, occurred in the beginning. And we were like, okay, now, we got to get to work. And mind you, as I said before, I had no culinary experience. So, bumping into Mike, the executive chef, Mike will talk about it, a little bit in the book. It was very frustrating to him to turn around and I'd be right there. He bump into me, maybe drop something. So that in itself was like a journey for me. And I learned a lot. So for everybody listening, I started off on the fries and the wings and eventually made my way up to the pizza.
Yeah. you would work yourself up from the bottom too. But
yes.
Tell us about some of the folks who have worked at Down North. You introduced some of them to us in the book, like Miss Trammell, the matriarch of the team. Tell us about her story.
Miss Trammell, she was the matriarch of the team. She was like the grandmother when we opened. And she, literally just came up to the door one day we were working. She was from the neighborhood and was like, I need a job. I just came home. I think she did a total of 5 years. And she just came home and wanted to join the team. She didn't, have any experience per se in the kitchen, but she had other skills, which I believe everybody possessed a skill set of something, right? And she, became a part of the prep team and the expediter come, grand opening. And anybody that who's from like these neighborhoods around Philly, it was always like the matriarch or the grandmom around the neighborhood who always would yell down the street to call people's names, to tell them like, it's time to come in. So Tramel brought that energy to grand opening. So it wasn't a traditional expediting experience. It was us telling Miss Tramel such and such pizza is up, and Tramel going outside yelling, saying your pizza up, and it became like a thing. And it was very, very effective. And it was very funny because a lot of people could relate to that growing up and hearing your mom or your grandmom just calling your name. And it's like, oh, am I in trouble?
You better come for dinner now.
So that was, some of the great memories of Miss Tramel, and like everybody just loved her and gravitated towards her. And she would, just be so appreciative of being in this environment and happy that, we were willing to take a chance to give her a chance at what we had going on.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to the food too. Your pizza is not Chicago style. It's, I guess people call it Detroit style, but I think you like to call it, like, let's just call it Philly style. And you really put an emphasis on that. All the pizzas are named after songs from iconic Philadelphia musicians, rappers, singers. Maybe let's start with the signature sauce, the Norf sauce. I've never seen a pizza sauce recipe quite like it. Describe your sauce to me.
Norf Sauce, sweet, smoky, spicy. It's a burst of flavors that work. Mike likes to coin himself as the flavor regulator. So Mike, he likes flavorful things. So, everything that we give you has some flavor to it. So the Norf Sauce, it's spelled Norf because being from Philly, that's how you say North Philly. Vernacular here, you say North with an F. So that's why it's called Norf Sauce, not North Sauce.
Yeah.
So that's our signature marinara sauce that goes on about 60% of our pies. Like nothing's traditional about Down North Pizza as a brand, the individuals. So we wanted to stay on brand with everything that we did. So that's what, you get with the Norf Sauce. And we always constantly correct people if they call it the North Sauce. So just as an FYI. Sauce. Yeah.
Yes, North Sauce. All right, let's get to some of the pies. I want to talk about one that is kind of like, and I know Chef Mike, a lot of these are his creations, but this one seems very personal to him. It's called Tales of a Hustler. Tell us about this pie and what's on it and the story behind it.
So Mike, he loves to smoke things. He has a smoker, and like you give him a chance, he'll smoke anything. Even things that, from a chef perspective is not supposed to be smoked. So that's a smoked brisket pie. And to the point where it's like, it's not a traditional topping on a pizza. But we feel like our pie is a blank canvas, is what we look at it essentially as, a blank canvas. So that one, is very dear to his heart. It's one of his favorite Philly songs, one of his favorite Philly artists, Sparks, Emilio Sparks from West Philly. Me and Mike are from West Philly. So it's like it has that sentimental value as well.
You also do a lot of vegan pies.
Yes.
Tell us about that. I mean, the PSK sounds incredible. That has oyster and shiitake mushrooms, onion peppers, and ají amarillo sauce. So like a Peruvian chili sauce. Why the focus on the vegan pies too?
Because we noticed that, because, I myself, I don't eat dairy. So we understand that there's a market out there for individuals who don't particularly, eat dairy or have dairy allergies, right? But would like to enjoy a nice vegan pie. And also people who are not vegan enjoy these pies. And I've actually tricked some of my friends and just gave them the pizza, not telling them it was vegan. And they was eating like, yo, what's this? It's so good. I'm like, that was vegan, right? Like, no, that wasn't vegan. So it's like, sometimes that's a good way to test some vegan stuff. Just give it to them and just, see what happens after that.
All right, Muhammad. Well, at first I would have thought it was pretty funny that a guy that doesn't eat dairy decided to open a pizza place. But now I understand it's all part of the larger mission, right? It's all larger mission of community and giving people from different backgrounds a place where they feel like they can belong. So thank you for that. And thank you for spending the time with us today.
No, I appreciate it. And, for those of you listening, Down North Pizza, we the pizza. Check us out.
We the pizza. Muhammad Abdul-Hadi is founder and owner of Down North Pizza in Philadelphia. His new cookbook is called We the Pizza, Slangin Pies and Savin Lives. You can find a recipe for their signature sauce, Norf Sauce, at splendidtable.org. And that is our show for this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. The Splendid Table was created by Sally Swift and Lynn Rossetto Casper, and was made this week by technical producer Jennifer Lukey, producers Eric Romero and Maria Wortel, and managing producer Sally Swift. Jordan Turgeon is our digital producer, our intern is Ruby Sigmund, and Lauren Humbert is our senior podcast production manager. Thank you for listening. I'm Francis Lamb, and this is APM, American Public Media.